So we are live on Facebook. Tahir Bhai, salam to you. Hope you are well. Where are you sitting right now? In Bali?
Yeah, in my living room here in Bali.
Okay. So, Tahir Bhai, first of all, how are things in Bali? How's lockdown and coronavirus treating you?
Oh, I feel very lucky, Alhamdulillah. Because we're so used to being on tour all the time and traveling so much, and the next tour, going into the next tour, going to the next tour.
Correct.
So it's been so nice to have a break from all the flights and just to be connected with my family and have the daily riyaz and everything else without having to recover from some tour, some jet lag or something.
But has there been an impact of lockdown in Bali, or are you quite immune to it?
Well, we live out in the countryside in a big house in a village, in the local kind of desi environment here. And so, if we go out on scooters for food or something, then we have face masks. But otherwise, we have a nice property to frolic on as a family.
Great.
We're lucky in that way, yeah.
Okay, so to those that are listening for now, and those that watch this later, during this lockdown, I've started the Qalandar Arts personal sessions, an opportunity to go a bit deeper and talk to some of the musicians and artists I've worked with since forming Qalandar Arts. And, there is a history here with Tahir Bhai, which is that I'm not sure how many people know this or that I've mentioned this to, but when I set up Qalandar Arts in late 2015, the very first email I wrote from a Qalandar Arts email address was to Tahir Bhai. I'd been following them on YouTube for several years beforehand, like so many of the overseas Pakistani community, first generation. We grew up with Qawwali, in the overseas countries, and, I opened my eyes and Qawwali was always there. So there was always a connection with this genre, but then seeing this bunch of, North Americans with dreadlocks embracing this culture was something that I, was following for a few years. And when I decided to set up Qalandar Arts, the first email, the first communication was with yourself. There's a lot that I'm very familiar with about you. So I have to make this interesting for myself as well, the questions I want to ask you and what I want to get into, because we've been on the road for, we've done 2 tours of the UK together, on the road together 2 weeks at a time. So let's start with Tahir Bhai, and please, for those listening and that will listen, feel free to throw in any questions that you may have. Tahir Bhai, where did this start? You alluded to this in the first, and we'll come on to the Music of the Mystics documentary in the first episode. But I want to just go a little bit deeper into, the where and the how and the why. So I mean, what age were you when these questions were arised in your head about truth and spirituality?
Yeah, it's a rabbit hole that could go and go and go. But basically, like, as you might have seen in the documentary series, there was a lot of antagonism in my family. And so the connection wasn't very strong there, especially with my father. So it required me to, spend a lot of time on my own and find my own way in life. And I was very young, like 14, 15, 16, had this insatiable urge, this yearning to find meaning to life, and studying all the different spiritual, mystical, religious scriptures, from Taoism to Buddhism to Vedanta, Islam and Sufism, Sikhism, the whole gamut, and spending hours and hours at the library, in the university library. And that was a way that I could also stay away from the issues that were going on in my family at the time.
Okay, so, but on this point, this is part of where I want to just go a little bit deeper. Were you rejecting or running away from a situation and then finding solitude and comfort and understanding and sense in these studies, or were you seeking something? I mean, which way round was it?
Yeah, it's a combination of things. Like, to be more blunt about it, my dad was really abusive so I didn't want to be at home, and I was still 14 and 15, so I didn't really have another option at that point. And so it was a way to escape that, but also I just felt an overall kind of like feeling of disconnection from my culture, I think. And so the seeking was fueled by that. It was powered by that. It was like a launching pad.
So you're in your late teens, coming into adulthood. I assume by the age references you've given. At what age were you when you sort of wandered off in search? Where the searching took you beyond the library?
When I was 15, I lived in a cave for about a year in Nova Scotia to practice meditation and do the studies and all that, and then basically gave away everything I owned, and spent all the money I had saved up on a one-way ticket to India. And then so when I was 16, I left for India and never returned home in that way.
I mean, that's sort of blown me away, right? Because that's a detail I didn't know. So, I mean, but a 15-year-old today who wants to go in search of something like that has tools and access to a smartphone, the internet, Uncle Google. All answers can be questioned. All answers can be questioned, and that individual can find whatever. As a 15-year-old, to end up without the accessibility of information in a cave in Nova Scotia, and then I mean, just tell me a little bit about that, because for most of us, we wouldn't be able to fathom such a thing without a smartphone in the hand. I mean, how do you even go about understanding where to go? How do you even understand who to go and trust? There's no reviews here, right?
Yeah, no, it's just a different world overall. But it was, there's a lot of countryside close to where I grew up. So I take a little rowboat across this piece of ocean. It's only like it's called the Nova Scotia Northwest Arm, and this little piece of ocean. So it only took about 15 minutes in my rowboat before I was like in this pristine, national forest area with the lake and all that. So I had found a cave there, and had my place to do my austerities like that. And interestingly enough, there was a road not far from there, and that's where the Sikh temple was. So I'd go for shabads, and that's where I met my first music guru, Harjit Sean Singh, and some of the the really devout Sikhs would come and actually visit me in the cave and talk about spiritual matters and all that. So there was a little bit of a connection brewing there too.
And this is at the age of 15.
Yeah, I was very young.
Wow. Okay, so in your description there is the common denominator is that whatever you're searching for, you're doing so through studies and knowledge and schools of thought and mysticism, which, let's say in a bracket, are Eastern orientated, right? By and large.
Yeah.
Is that a fair assumption? Yeah. Okay. So at what point are you sure that your direction is East? I mean, you're studying, you're reading, but at what point do you say, right, this is before we get into later stages in your life, but at what point are you sure that, okay, well, what I'm reading, be it through meditation, be it through Sikhism, Buddhism, Islam, whatever it is, but the East is where I need to be?
Yeah, I don't know. That's just what attracted. Like I was part of a Christian youth group too before that, and different forms of seeking. But yeah, it just called to me, and like seeing pictures of yogis and malangs and dervishes and swamis and all that, somehow there's like this kinship there that drew me in.
Okay, so then you depart for India at the age of
16.
And one-way ticket, return ticket?
Yeah, one-way ticket. Like I said, I'd given away everything I owned.
Right. Okay, so you got no more possessions now. You get on a plane to India at the age of 16. How long do you spend in India on that trip?
It was 5 years, and ironically enough, like I got on the plane with just a lungi and a kamandal and a danda, and I even forgot to bring chappals, right? So I was like in the check-in area looking all strange, like a sannyasi already. And my family was saying goodbye to me, and it was like saying goodbye to my family for the last time, go away and live in the Himalayas. And I didn't have any chappals, so they were like, "Oh, you can't get on the plane without something in your feet." So I borrowed my sister's like size 4 chappals to get on the plane. I remember. It was nutty.
Okay, so you go 5 years. You're 16 years old. I'm just trying to contextualize this for myself. What was I doing when I was 16? What were my friends doing when we were 16? I mean, we're talking about just a revolution here, right? In terms of what you're born into and what you choose to go in search for. And we're talking about a complete and utter revolution here, right? Or of existence.
Yeah, I guess you could call it that.
Okay, so what do you do in those 5 years? What's day one look like? I mean, I'm a sucker for detail, right? So you turn up in India. What's the first destination, and what's day one of that journey look like? What are you doing?
Oh, the stories are endless, Hassan. But I remember, so I was already dressed completely like a sannyasi and everything. I already had my jata up with a rudraksha on it and my lungi and everything. And I remember people being like, "Wow, this guy looks interesting." And then I was so excited to finally get to India because I dreamt about it. Like my mind was so focused. I was reading scripture every day and studying about the culture and about the spiritual practices, and maybe it was from a bygone era at a certain point that I was expecting, but I was so elated. I remember when I got there in the middle of the night, and there's all the people like with their chadars and the woolen blankets, and it's all smoky, and there's a certain atmosphere there in Delhi back then, and getting on like one of the local buses for 50 paisa to get to Shishganj Gurdwara, one of the Sikh temples there that some of my guru and friends said, "Oh, you just stay there when you get to Delhi, and you can stay with the other sadhus." And I remember I was so elated and so excited because I'd been like, looking forward to this big life change for a couple of years. And that when I was getting off the bus, I remember like totally falling out of the bus and toppling over in the middle of the night and getting all scuffed up, like my kamandal and danda, like all like flying. And the bus while I was like, "TK," I was like, "Yeah, I'm fine." I was like a little bit bloody and scraped up, but I was just so elated and so happy to be there. And I remember the dawn, like the dawn was beginning to happen as I walked down Chandni Chowk. Back then was really actually a pretty cool part of Delhi, and I remember there was like this mandir and this Baba sitting outside the mandir, and he's like, "Oh, come up to the mandir." And I went and they were having this puja, and it was really beautiful. It's this very old mandir, and there's this big tree in there, and these ladies were going around and doing the aarti.
Yeah.
And they had the candles and the the tilak. And when I was just kind of like checking it out because I'd been to the mandir a bunch in Canada and Toronto and all that stuff. Anyway, so they get to me, and instead of like doing what they were doing and giving me the puja thing and giving me a tilak, they like gave me the plate, and then they like bowed at my feet to like offer them the tilak and the puja. And it was already this thing of like, wow, people like I'm not just some like strange oddity. Like people are like, "Oh, he's a Baba." There's like I had a place all of a sudden, and so it just
they recognize the significance of what you were doing. I mean,
somehow
the relinquishing of all possessions, of all wealth, and on the path that you were on.
Yeah, I can't say much, but it was interesting to feel that, and it just continued because then I walked down the street, and then I'm at the Gurdwara, the Sikh temple, and I get to like the common area where all the poor people kind of hang out, where I was going to stay the night and the day and all that, recover from the flight, and all the nihangs are there, like the Sikh, you could say like yogis, but they have the really long pagaris,
correct.
And the chakras all around them, and they're like, "You're one of our crew, come on over here." And I remember just hanging out with them for the day and like talking about like scriptures and spiritual practices.
So they didn't see a young North American white boy at the time. They saw something beyond that.
Yeah, I think the other aspects of it just kind of cut through enough.
Right, yeah, your earphones are making that rustle noise, so just be conscious of that.
Okay, let me try to move.
So, all right, so let's get closer to home now. So you've doing this 5 years. For those listening, feel free to ask any questions that you want to. At some point, what is it? Is it Qawwali music? Is it Sufism, or is it Islam, which becomes a pull for you?
Yeah, it was a whole step in the journey. And I had spent many years there in India and Tibet in the Himalayas, like practicing meditation, doing spiritual practice and all that. And I had some classical music studies. Like I said, I met my Sikh guru in Nova Scotia. So he taught me like tabla and singing and all that back when I was a young teenager for a bit. But so it was a very solitary life. It's a very tough life, you know, having we weren't allowed to have any possessions, so you'd either be fed by people or eat off the land or be fasting. And there was a lot of stories in there. It was quite character building, to say the least.
Let me just get this right. So during these 5 years, you're not allowed, you have to be fed by others.
Yeah, as a sannyasi, you can't like carry money or go to shops and things like that.
And this is from age 16 to 21.
Yeah.
So for 5 years, you don't carry money, you don't go and buy anything. You have to be fed by someone, and if you're not fed, you fast.
Yeah, it's basically like that. I did come back to Canada for a couple of times in there. Somehow I felt like, oh, I really need to see like my grandmother or my mother, and you know. But then every time I'd come back, I just feel so out of place, and just nothing made sense. So I, as quickly as I could, rush back to India and go from where I left off.
So how do you? I mean, sorry to ask such a question, but how do you even fly back from India to Canada?
I faxed my mom.
Okay.
From a village in Himachal Pradesh, and I was like, "Mom, I really want to go home and see my grandmother while she's still alive." I just had some kind of calling there.
Okay.
And so she faxed me back a ticket a couple of days later to this village.
Okay, all right, that makes sense. Okay, right. But overall, during these 5 years in India, you don't carry any money, you don't go and buy anything, and you have to be fed by others.
Yeah, that's one of many of the rules of a renunciate. Yeah.
All right. So, and then when does this steer happen towards specifically Qawwali music? Yeah, because okay, your first guru in Nova Scotia is teaching you something on tabla and on you know Indian classical music. Doesn't necessarily mean you become a Qawwal, does it? Right. So, what are the steps that actually in this journey brought you on this path? And again, the question was it Qawwali music, which was the magnet? Was it Islam, or was it Sufism?
Oh, it was a combination of things, because I had heard the music of Ustad Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan the year before I went to India, just like on a CD, and it just rocked my world. And my Sikh guru that was teaching me music, and you know, we'd learn Gurbani and all that also in the Gurdwara. He'd be like, "Have you heard Qawwali? Have you heard like Ustad Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan?" And he'd sing a little bit of something and be like, "No, that sounds really cool." And so it was in there. And then on one of those short trips that I came back to visit my grandmother in Toronto, I went to Montreal and ended up visiting a Sufi community, because you know I had been reading also Rumi and Hafiz and Jami and the Quran and Hadith and different things. So that was also in there as an inspiration, as an interest. And going to that community, we did zikr, and that was my first time doing zikr, and it rocked my world. It was really powerful, that feeling of communal devotion. And so for that period that I was in Montreal, I was part of that community of Naqshbandi Sufis. They were from North and East Africa.
I was about to
And
ask you which order, because, for example, as you know, I worked very closely for the last year or so with Zain Muhammad, this phenomenal musician in London, and Zain is Naqshbandi of the Naqshbandi order, and I didn't know too much about it, or Sheikh Nazim, before engaging with Zain, but now I do, and I will be actually, once we're over lockdown, I'll be going to my first ever zikr ever. I've never been to one.
really?
Yeah, I've never been to a zikr, so I'll be going with Zain to my first zikr. There's been a few virtual ones. I don't want to do virtual. It's my first ever time, so
Yeah.
I've committed to going with Zain to his zikr. Anyway, so tell me. So you go to, so it's a Naqshbandi order. It's Montreal. Okay, what happens next? You get rocked by the first ever zikr. What happens next?
Yeah, it was just such a contrast from the lonely ascetic life, like where spirituality is all about that inward journey. And so it was really the first time in my life that I felt that sense of community and the power of communal prayer. And, and then on levels that I don't understand, I was very moved by it. So kept coming back to that. And the Sheikh was really, really encouraging. He was from Djibouti, East Africa. And he became my peer, Sheikh Leban Yusuf. And he was just really fun and really open-minded and understood about like meditation and seclusion, all the things I was into, and talking about his lineage, about how they would do that for a period of time. And he had different austerities going where he wasn't eating this or not sleeping then, or all that kind of stuff. And then, so I learned about namaz and the Quran and the 5 pillars, all these different things there in that time. And I really appreciated it a lot. And yeah, so that was a big part of it.
I mean, this might sound a bit controversial, but all of these things are based on our own perceptions of things, right, and our own limited knowledge, right? So, I mean, but for me, Sufism and Islam are not necessarily the same thing. The end destination is, but the path is very, very different. So, am I correct that the Sufi way was first and foremost your attraction that then brought you into, let's say, awareness and knowledge and learnings of something called more traditional Islam, quote unquote?
Yeah, I think the two weren't so separated in that time. I wasn't like being like, okay, this is zikr, so that's Sufi, and then this is namaz over here, and then this is Ramadan, and it didn't come across like that, and it didn't really concern me either.
Okay, so that's your experience of zikr. Again, how does that then contribute towards the Tahir we know today? How does that join some of these dots up for me?
Well, it's just one of those major experiences that really touched me in a deep way. And after that, I went back to the Himalayas. I was in caves and doing all kinds of crazy austerities and seclusions and fasts and everything. But I remembered that communal power that I had tasted. And the next time I had gone back to Canada for a short trip, I lived in that community again and just kept learning. And in that process, listened to more Qawwali. And yeah, it just drew me closer and closer over time. And I started to feel, after so many years of seclusion, especially at that age, when there's so much vigor, that when I'd hear like the different sadhus or like wandering minstrels doing their devotional practice, like walking through a village, maybe 3 guys, like one with the chimta, one with the dholak, and one with the ektar or something, and just totally thrashing out some bhajans, or sometimes they were Sufis and singing mankabat or whatever. And it was like, wow, that's something that's really, really beautiful and really powerful. It's a way to share that devotion. And I felt a bit like, wow, a lot of this depth that I'm experiencing and all this beautiful and profound experience that's happening in this seclusion, it'd be beautiful to give that a voice somehow.
Hence Qawwali.
Yeah, it brought me to Qawwali by the time I left that full-time sadhu life.
So by the time you leave, you decide, I mean, are you sure and committed, right? I want to be a Qawwal now.
It was, I I was kind of over living in India for a few reasons. So I ended up in, I always go back and visit my family, then feel like I had to leave right away. And so I'd always be like, felt a bit lost. Like, okay, I'm not in India. I'm not in Tibet. I'm not in a place where I have like a place so much. I don't have a place in my family, and I don't have like a circle of friends. I don't have a book club. Anyway, so I was like, I'll just go to Vancouver on a trip just to get out of being at home, and hitchhiked to Vancouver and met up with some people that had some similar interests, and ended up in Hawaii just out of nowhere. And I had this whole idea of like, oh, I'm gonna live off the land in Hawaii for a bit, and being in a bit of a cleaner, safer atmosphere, and just live in the jungle and do my lifestyle there. And that's where I met Amina. That's where I met Pascal. That's where I met Lali. All that there, as you know.
Yeah, as I know. Yeah.
I was pretty socially inadept at that point because I had spent so much time in seclusion.
Yeah, you
and
still
I
up.
never really had much of a yeah. Anyway, so where are we going? Oh yeah, so I ended up in Hawaii, and we were getting, since I had friends for the first time with these similar interests, and then we were practicing devotional music, and all of us had heard Qawwali. All of us really freaking loved Qawwali. He already had a bunch of CDs I didn't have at that time that I couldn't get at the Nova Scotia Library. And, like you said, back then it was like VHS and cassettes and all that, and you have to find them in the physical form. Just type them in somewhere.
For the benefit of listeners, put a year on this now. What year are we talking where you meet what turned out to be the other members of the group?
It was 2001.
2001. Okay.
And that was the year we started the group. So anyway, so we're listening to all these Qawwalis, and we had our favorites and this and that. And I was like, let's do this. Let's do Qawwali camp. And like everybody that's really keen on Qawwali in the crew here, or extended crew, we're going to practice 3 times a week for a couple hours. Because that's before we had families. We didn't have responsibilities. We were just like a bunch of roughnecks, like sleeping on the beach and meditating and stuff. And so so we did that, and I think it was literally 3 months of that. And so it became this fraternity, and everybody really liked the experience of like having a focus, like a steady focus to learn and to do practice. And I had already like listened to these Qawwalis a lot and transcribed them into English. I mean, the best that I could, as well as the melodies, and found ways of translating them when I was in India to understand the meanings more. And anyway, so we had our 4 Qawwalis. They were Esarvare, Duniauddin, Naat Sharif, and Masta Kalandar, and Maki Madani, and Mankunto Mola. I think those were the 4 Qawwalis, 5 Qawwalis we learned. Anyway, so we practiced them really hard from scratch and just learned every word and every melody. And we had a whole group, like an 8-person freaking Qawwali group of like ragamuffin hippies learning Qawwali. And, everybody I think strives for some kind of focus and discipline too when you don't have all those commitments of work and family. So it had a power there that everybody appreciated and stayed in. And we were going to do a recital. So we planned to practice all this stuff. And we had booked this date at a venue to do a performance of all these things as a whole thing. Anyway, and it was really successful. Not only did we really love the experience of singing
this
together
is in Hawaii.
with people.
So the first sort of performance is in Hawaii?
Yeah, absolutely.
To similar crop of people searching for something different, people living in a different way.
Yeah, it was a mix. There's cultured people there too.
Okay, so 2001, you all meet. You start doing riyaz and practicing. You at this stage are the only one who's had some type of formal music education from the subcontinent?
I think everybody had their skills and stuff in different ways. You know, Lali was roaming around with his ukulele, like freestyling, and yeah, we all had different musical abilities. I don't think we were trained in any way other than that we had just sung a lot because we had the time and inspiration behind it. So we learned from each other more or less. And yeah, I had learned from my guru some of the formalities around classical music.
Okay, so let's fast forward a bit then. Then at what point do you, and correct me if I'm wrong, if my knowledge is incorrect here, at what point do you and Amina go to Pakistan to find Ustad Dildar and, you know, say teach us Qawwali?
Yeah, good question. There was like this, so there was a solid year there of like listening to Qawwali like crazy. Like it was our be all and end all, and practicing a lot since that first experience was so beautiful and successful and brought a lot of meaning to our lives. And so Amina and I, who were together at the time, we were really excited to study seriously. And basically, you know, we were going to India for half the year and studying in Benares and the other cities of classical music. And then we'd go to Pakistan for half of that time. So we'd be in India and then Pakistan.
And this again, 2000 what, 2, 3?
Yeah, it was 2003 when we first went to Pakistan, because there was still that like, you know, wondering how to get a visa and what is Pakistan like. And when we finally went, it was because we were studying in Ajmer for a month. We lived right at the Dargah, like a couple Malangs, and practiced at the like and offered our Hazri there and was learning all the classics, Kirpa Karo Maharaj and all that stuff. And we were hanging out with the peers, the Sajida Nasheens, Gari Nasheens, and learning about the meaning of the Qawwalis. So we went through like a whole period of translating dozens and dozens of our favorite Qawwalis. And this one that we all love, Dam Dam Karo Farid, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you introduced me to that as well.
Yeah, it's like, oh, this is such a beautiful thing. And this how Nusrat sings for this Baba Farid. Who is this Baba Farid? Then we all knew Ganje Shakar, Mera Ganje Shakar. And there's a certain simplicity to these Punjabi mankabat kalams for Baba Farid that I really, really appreciated. Anyway, so we were translating that, and the guy's like, I don't know much Punjabi. Like the Gari Nashin, quite Mahbub Chishti was in, and it's like, I don't know much Punjabi, but it's for this one of the Khajigan, Hazrat Baba Ganje Shakar, Rahmatullah alayhi. And we're like, cool, where's this dargah? I want to just go. I'm feeling this affinity. And it's like, oh, it's in Pakistan, in this little village called Pak Patan in Punjab. And then so after a month of being there and studying and just being a little tired of not being exposed to much good Qawwali in India, no offense to the few really good Indian Qawwals out there, we decided to go to Pak Patan and took a train from Amritsar, and it was this long trip. And it was all very new to us. Like we didn't know people there. We didn't know where to go and what to do, but we just knew I want to go to this dargah of Baba Farid.
Wow.
Farid. Yeah. There's a lot of stories in there. It was a wild experience. But then we lived also like Malangs there at the Dargah of Baba Farid in Pak Patan, and it was a beautiful time.
What's the reception there? Like, you know, two North Americans, wannabe Qawwals turn up. What's the reception like?
Basically, we got off this train, and it was so dusty at that time of year. Like I remember I was wearing black robes at that time, and they turned like to this like peach color because of all this dust on this long trip, and almost nobody was on the train because it was just a foolish thing to do, but we didn't really know how to travel in Pakistan at that time. And obviously there's not like tourists going to Pak Patan, there's not like a system there. So we were like at the train station, and then back then we didn't really have money or much money, so we were walking from the train station with our instruments to the dargah, and we just kept being like, Dargah Baba Farid, and they're like, oh yeah, this way. And we just kept going and walking. Must have been like an hour. And it's like, you know, that Punjabi village, especially back then, it's all colorful and the people are very buoyant. It was beautiful vibe. And on the way, we started hearing some Qawwali, and we started hearing like the tabla beats and all that. And we're like, oh, somebody's bumping some really good Qawwali from a stereo. Let's get a chai there if it's a chai wala. And we're pretty ready to have a little break from our long trip with our instruments.
So you're carrying your harmonium, and she's carrying her tablas.
Yeah, we lugged those instruments well across the subcontinent, and so we're following this sound, and expecting to end up at some like stereo system, and we get to the dargah, and it's like you see the big like minarets of the mosque, and we heard the music up there. We were so excited. So we went back then. They had just these few steps. It was very different than what it is now, and went up and followed the sound. And there was the dargah, there was the masjid, and there was the Qawwal sitting right there by the chilla of Sabir Park, I believe. And they were just thrashing Qawwali in that way that we had always wanted to learn and hear, like the Punjabi andaz of Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan, and that certain intensity and musicality. And we just, you know, dropped our stuff in a corner. We didn't like know anybody. We just like, it was all so new, and just started going into must, because we were so moved by the experience of finally arriving, the pilgrimage to this music. And we just started going must and headbanging, and the Qawwals just took like an instant liking to us, and all the darvishes and malangs and malanginis that live at the shrine there. So then we started living in Pakistan and learning from the local Qawwals and getting to know the who's who and the ethics and what is Sama, what is Mehfil Sama in Pakistan, where it has a lot more of a tradition.
Let's just recap this though, for my benefit. if the listeners got it, you know, good to them. I mean, you're in India. You hear about this place through Nusrat. You were start asking questions through Nusrat Qawwali. You get to know about this place called Pakistan. You get on a train from India to Pakistan. You get to the nearest train station an hour away from the actual dargah. You walk carrying your instruments without knowing where you're going, just asking people dargah, dargah, dargah. You start hearing Qawwali music. You follow the music thinking it's maybe being played on the stereo or something, and it's a shop or cafe, get a chai in that dusty village, whatever. But you end up going straight to the dargah. You get there.
Yeah.
You go nuts on arrival that, wow, we've made it, and this Qawwali being played as we arrive.
Must on arrival, yeah.
You go must, and everyone basically opens their arms to you two.
Yeah, it felt like arriving home moment for sure.
Unbelievable. So that's your first time to Pakistan. You then, I mean, how long do you stay there now and immerse yourself in the teachings and the learnings?
That was a month. And then all the Qawwals were like, we're all going to Lahore. And we're like, why is everybody going to Lahore? They're like, oh, it's the urs of Data Ganjabaksh Ali Hajveri, their Data Sab. And we're like, what's an urs? And they're like, urs is the death anniversary, the celebration for a master that has passed away. And this is Data Ganjabaksh. And all the Qawwals come to this one. And we're like, really, all the Qawwals? What about like Ustad Faiz Ali Faiz? And they're like, oh yeah, he'll be there. We're like, Ustad Rizwan Muazzam, Ustad Sher. You went through all the Qawwals that we've been listening to in recordings forever and totally crushing on hardcore. And we're like, hell yeah. So we went to Lahore, and it's like a crazy city, you know, especially if there's, you know, finding our way there as vagabond Qawwali seeker Sufis was pretty interesting and challenging. I remember trying to find a place for us to stay, and there's a lot of stories, but it was challenging. The whole thing was pretty.
Yeah, I mean, Lahore then 2002, 3, 4 is not the Lahore of today, which is quite, it's quite organized now. I mean, it was a big, dusty, big town at the time.
Yeah, and it's in that area like Bharti Gate and Paniwala Talab and Dal Mandi. it's very like that old part of Lahore where
Right.
Data Sahib is. So we specifically wanted a place to stay right at Data Sahib. Anyway, so we get there, and like some of the Qawwals from Pakistan are there, but there's like heaps of Qawwal groups, and we're like, who are all these people? And there's like little mehfils happening on the streets, and you see the Dhamal there, and just it's busy, and they have the pandal there under the dargah at that time. And so we were listening to the Qawwali and just going really musty and getting really into it. And I remember, who was it that I asked? I was like, I heard there's like some really heavy hitter Qawwals here, like Ustad Sher Ali Mer Ali or Rahat Fateh Ali Khan. Like, where do we get to see them? Because we were seeing all kinds of great Qawwali, but they were a lot of people that we didn't know. I was actually just going through my old photos from that trip just recently because we did a tribute on our episode 2 of
Yes,
the
yeah,
doco.
I saw the episode 2 tomorrow. We'll come on to the movie in a moment.
And there was pictures of us like hanging out with all these big Qawwals, and at the time I didn't know who they were, other than that they were like amazing personalities and played so well. And now I'm like, oh my God, I was hanging out with so and so. That was Makhan Leelawala. He like passed away the next year, and I've been like going crazy over his music, like from the 1960s repertoire. Anyway, so I asked somebody, I was like, where's these big Qawwals? When are they gonna play? They're like, I don't know, people just play, there's mehfil over here, sama over there, there's what's happening in the pandal, like between namaz times. It's just happening. Oh, but I think they're all staying at the Pilot Hotel. I'm like, they're all staying at a Pilot, what's this Pilot Hotel? Like, oh, it's just this hotel across the street, and just go check it out. So we get to the reception, and I'm like, Assalamu alaikum, we're looking for Ustad Sher Ali Mer Ali. And they're like, oh yeah, room number 6. I'm like, okay, cool. How about Ustad Akhtar Sharif? They're like, oh, room number 4. I'm like, how about, they're like, just look outside, there's like this chart, and there's business cards of every Qawwal in the room number. And I was fucking hell. I looked at all these masters, like everybody was in that hotel.
Nuts.
So we just go up to, I don't remember, I think it was Rahat's room first, Rahat Fateh Ali Khan, and just knock on the door. And he just opens the door, and he's like, just in his lungi, he's like, hi. And we're like, hi. We are, he's like, whatever, just come on in. And so, we had all of our experiences meeting all those Qawwals, and we just like, jaw dropped to the ground, just like drooling over that moment of meeting them and how inviting they were. And from there, of course, they all invited us to, like, Amina and I, to live with them and study with them properly. They were so inviting, like, yeah, come to my house, stay for like a few weeks, and we'll teach you a little bit about Qawwali. You're already sounding good, but there's so much to learn. It would be great to have you. And so that, following that, we spent all those months like living in Ustad Farooq Fateh Ali Khan's room there in Faisalabad for a month. We lived with Ustad Sher Mer Ali there in Ghulam Muhammadabad in Faisalabad, and we lived with Akhtar Sharif in Gunchawala. We lived,
Unbelievable.
It was like that. So we were just like in the deep end from that moment in Lahore. Yeah.
So, I mean, your learning curve must have just gone north, right? Being surrounded by these ustads and getting their tutelage and mentoring. I mean, was it a rapid development from there?
It was getting thrown in the deep end. It was different because in India, like, everybody gets up really early. They practice their scales. It's very organized as far as we had experienced, which was great. While in Pakistan, they just stay up all night and just like play really hardcore, like get really into it, get really sentimental, and then drink lots of chai, and then the mother brings in some food, and it's like a whole scene on the floor, as you know. And it was really great, but at the same time, we had come from like living in Hawaii, where it's like fresh air and like fruits and this and that, swimming in the ocean, to like living in these really crowded and really polluted cities where people are like chain smoking in rooms. And so honestly, it was really hard to adapt to it, but the power of the music and just people's personalities and kindness really made it so we just couldn't leave. It was so precious.
And then from, again, the original question was, and great, I mean, this has been so insightful even for me. I almost don't care if anyone's listening or not. This is just, for me, just an absolute pleasure to hear this from you. The Ustad Dildar, how does that connection emerge?
That was a good one. I wish Amina was on this call to talk about that one. You'll have to hear the story from her in the movie in the next episode, actually, which features her. But so where were we? We were in one of the rooms in room number 5, Pilot Hotel, room number 5, right? And we were in one of the rooms. Oh yeah, with Sher Mer Ali, and they had left, and a bunch of the other singers from the group were there, and there was Warsi Balu Khan, which is one of Tafu's relatives, and like a bunch of heavy hitters. You know how in Pakistan it's like that, they just hang out in a room and there's like a bunch of like super masters, and they're like, oh, let's play this thing in 5 beat, and then let's laugh at this joke, and then it's just such a fraternity. And then so we're with all this heavy hitter crew, feeling a bit like these meek, wannabe Qawwals wanting to learn and getting so excited. Like the enthusiasm was like coming out of our ears, at that time. And I remember Ustad Dildar walked in and everybody stood up. And I was like, oh my God, that's Ustad Dildar Hussain, wow. That's Ustad Nusrat's tabla. I was, I could barely speak. Everybody like stands up and he comes in and with Ibrar and Israr, and Israr was like, I don't know, 9 years old at that time, and they started jamming. And they just started bonding there. And when we lived in Ustad Farooq Fateh Ali Khan's room there in Nusrat's house after his death, Dildar would come over regularly. He was coming over all the time, him and Irshad and Rahmat Ali and Kokab and Ilyas Khan, like all the original members of Nusrat's group, they were coming over pretty regularly, and they just jam all night, like hardcore. And
you're there
on the deck.
You're there.
Yeah, it was in our room partly because we were so into it that they loved having us around, because we were just like getting off on every note, every sarigam, every alap, and every story. And so the whole crew was always just jamming.
I mean, you just said something. I mean, Nusrat's original crew, so less Nusrat, everyone else is there, and you, I mean, almost for your benefit, that they're jamming because you and Amna want to immerse yourself in this.
I think they were also, that's what they do. They just get together and jam and practice new stuff every night. So either they were playing all night long or getting in the tour bus at like 6 and playing some mahfil all night. So we'd be on, with the group in the bus and get to Golra Sharif or wherever it was and listen to them perform, and then arrive like early in the morning. So there's a lot of experiences like that, like, stuff that you can't just like curate. Like I remember when me and Amina were in the car with Rahat Fateh Ali Khan, and it was like the dawn was coming and we were coming back from a show in Islamabad, and they were he put in this cassette. He's like, have you heard my grandfather's music, Ustad Fateh Ali Khan, Mubarak Ali Khan? I'm like, yeah, I found some recordings in the bazaar. They're really amazing. There's not much though. He's like, oh, check this out. So he has this like a cassette and pops it in. It's just Sab Mandir Masjid Mekhane, Koi Yemane, Koi Vomane. And he was just singing along to every verse, like while we were in the car, and like moments like that of like really tuning into the depth of the music and the message through the master himself, like moments like that were very, very, very important.
I mean, you can't write the script for that, can you? I mean, you can't plan for that, can you? That's a totally fortuitous situation.
Yeah, it was pretty special. Hence staying in Pakistan so long that first trip, Amina and I.
So so then is it at this stage that Ustad Dildar takes Amna under his wing?
Yeah, well, you might have seen those pictures of her shagan when she was initiated,
correct.
and that's just in Nusrat's house there back when it still existed, and we're all in the living room, and the Hat's there, and Sai Irshad there, the whole group, and she had her initiation then.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so before we get into the movie, there's one question I have been meaning to ask you, right? You know, when you start as a Qawwal, you know, I mean, one only has to go into some of the original videos and look at, you know, some of those early days on YouTube, for example. You know, I mean, it's not the Tahir Qawwal we all know and love today, right? In terms of, you know, pronunciation, in terms of accent and various other things, right? Now, I'm not knocking it. The question I have is that when you, I could only assume how, as much love that you got and support in those early days as a Qawwal, there must have been a lot of ridicule as well. There must have been a lot of antagonism and questioning that who are these guys, what are they doing with our music, because it's just not known that outside of lineage or dynasty someone really embraces this in the way that you have, right? Let alone from another country and culture and all the rest of it. I mean, if that wasn't the case, that's just an assumption I'm making. But if that was the case, that as much as you got love, warmth, and support, there was also ridicule and antagonism. There must have been challenging moments in those early days. That are we, you know, should we stay on this, or should we be? Do we want to be serious about this? Is this just a hobby or a lifestyle? Again, if I'm making assumptions that are wrong, correct me. But this is just as a mere mortal, you know, just trying to process your life and knowing, you know, my heritage very well. If that was the case, that there were challenging moments in those early years, what if that's the case, what is it that kept you going? Where does the, you know, where does one get the motivation every day to wake up and take that and face it? If that's the case, if it was all love and, you know, and a bed of roses, then my assumptions are all wrong.
Yeah, it was mostly a bed of roses. There wasn't that kind of antagonism. There was everybody was so encouraging and so kind and so welcoming that we had come so far. They could feel our sincerity, they could feel our enthusiasm, they could feel like what we already learned and what we knew, and the way that we held this tradition with so much respect was
and that's
so
off the
palpable.
bat. That's 2002, 2003. Off the bat, people have seen that in you and Amina.
Yeah, I think that's what kept us going through, and the fact that we weren't like really wealthy, that we were just like shoestringing ourselves along because we cared so much about it. I think people felt that too.
Wow.
Yeah, the more challenge was, it wasn't culturally, it wasn't musically, it wasn't socially, it was just that we had come from, you know, living in the jungles and having this whole like austere, like live off the land and be on your own purity lifestyle, to like landing in a huge polluted city with so much chaos and so much population. Like those are the things that were really hard to get through at times, and just getting sick a lot and struggling to breathe and find like the inner peace and sanity, because we just, neither of us had been used to living in a big city in that way.
Another question that I personally, and if anyone's got questions, feel free, throw them in. And again, this is just based on assumptions, right? And perceptions. I don't know the truth, hence I'm asking the question. So, you know, you start this journey and, you know, you establish Fanna-Fi-Allah and, you know, you've got this group, etc. At what point did you personally feel that, and maybe you haven't, but was there a point at which you personally felt, okay, now as a Qawwal, I can hold my own?
Oh, I don't know if there was one moment, and I still strive for that feeling of feeling like, you know, the sincerity behind the expression of music in my own expression of it in the groups is there, like feeling like we can, it's a tool for being able to express that ishq and share that is there. And as far as like the like ustadship of being able to like understand all the rags, sing them all in tune, and always find the sum, and know the language, the gira, the dora, the rubai, like all these elements of the music is so huge. It's so classical. I feel like we're solar systems away from being able to reach some plateau point, but the way that it grows organically is magical, I must say. I'm like striving for something that's far away, other than practicing a lot and learning a lot still.
The question is not, it has that journey. It's many lifetimes, right, of a journey to get to learn all that and get your head around it. But just right, as an individual human being, right, I've learned something. I've spent years devoting myself to it. I feel comfortable, as a Qawwal now, that I can go out on stage and shred. I mean, was there a point at which that sort of realization that, I'm good at this. I'm genuinely good at this.
Yeah, I don't know if I could say I'm generally good in context to like the
I can say
that we've studied with.
I can say that, and the 700 people that came to the Union Chapel 2018 and went crazy, they can tell you that.
Thank you, Hassan. Mm-hmm. There was moments like, say, like when one year when we were in Pakistan and offering our hazadi several times because we were quite popular that year, and we were like, Baba mere man ka raja mera do, and like people would just be getting up and like showering us with money and just feeling it so hard. There was those moments when we were like, yes, we're in our Pakistan and we're singing for our Baba. And yeah, just owning it like that. But in all kinds of different ways. Like when we were in Russia, in St. Petersburg a few months ago, we had a mehfil, and somehow we just locked in on a level of, we had reached like because we had toured so hard in Europe and the States over those months, we just got to a level of like playing very well together. And at one of those mehfils, I was like, guys, we played very well. We played very well. So there's, feelings like that too.
And when you have that feeling of playing very well, is it subject to there being a symbiotic element between you, the audience, and all the members of the group? Or can you almost remove, is the spirituality so deep that sometimes the audience is almost irrelevant?
It depends. It's very subjective, but it is a recipe. And since we're talking about Qawwali, it is when everybody is playing their role with their utmost sincerity and heart and passion. And it does help when the audience is receiving it and the environment is holding it. But yeah, it's always different because there's been so many unlikely times. Like we're playing some really big theater concert and we're like, oh, I can't believe we're playing at the such and such theater. This is really awesome. And it just feels a little flat, the atmosphere. And then we'll be playing at some just playing outside under a tree in a parking lot before our set at some festival. And we just like thrash it and we're just feeling it and we're relaxed and we're inspired by the piece that we're working on. Or some people walk up and it's like, oh my God, what is this? And it's always unique in that way.
Just on that point earlier about, when I said that I can tell you you're good, and the 700 people, we just had a comment from Aisha Khan, who was there. She said, yes, the Union Chapel Glandarats event was mesmeric, right? So, that is genuinely the feeling we all had that day. Okay, let's move on to the movie, Tahir Bhai, because that's been such a labor of love. And Tanya is online as well. Hello, Hassan and Tahir. Really enjoying this conversation. I have a question for Tahir. I'd love to know how you got into Sufism and when did you assume your identity as a Sufi? So that was
Sufi persona?
Yeah, like as a title, as a label that you would wear.
When I had Shahada with my peer, I was 17.
That was
and
in
he
Montreal?
gave me the name. Yeah, and he gave me the name Tahir, so I kept that name when I went back to India, and since then. And then when I became a Qawwal, it was Tahir Qawwal, and then when I was initiated there in Pakistan, it was Tahir Qawwal.
So,
Just names though.
but when you initiated, I mean, Amna was initiated into the Chishti order, right?
Yeah.
You were initiated into the Naqshbandi order.
Initially, but my peer was very open-minded like that. He, you know, he practiced in that way, but yeah, he didn't have any like judgments about my interest in Qawwali or being in India and Pakistan. He was very encouraging, and still he's very encouraging whenever we're in touch.
So now, I mean, today, the tradition that you would hang your hat on, is it just Sufi, or is it, you know, an order within that?
Yeah, I just don't define life like that. Like, yeah, I'm a Sufi and I'm a Qawwal, and that's what I do for a living, and that's my life's journey and my life's dedication. But no, I'm open to the idea of not being labeled as a particular thing as being that important. I like the fraternity of the community, but also it's like, as you know, a double-edged sword. Because if you're like, okay, I feel really happy to be part of the community of Islam, and then a bunch of people are arguing about whether music is permissible or haram, you're like, actually, maybe I'm not want to be associated like that, you know? So
Tanya's followed up saying, oh, maybe we've answered it now. She said no as a being, but I think we've just answered it. She's followed up with the comments to say nice. Nice to have you online, Tanya. We should. I'm going to line up business here, Tahir Bhai. We should do this with you and Paolo, Tanya. Okay. Okay. So Tahir Bhai, the movie, and let me just frame that very quickly. Anyone that hasn't or doesn't know of this passion and labor of love that Tahir Bhai and the members of the group have put into this movie, Music of the Mystics, which is now online, I cannot encourage you highly enough to go and watch it. It's you know, it's filmed over many, many years. It's part of their personal and inner journeys, but it's not an advert for Fanna-Fi-Allah. That's what I've loved about it. It's a capturing of the tradition in documentary form, in beautiful documentary form for the generations to come. And what turned out, what originally was supposed to be a movie, has ended up being, you know, quite a long final version, which has been beautifully cut into eight episodes. The second episode went online yesterday. I watched it this morning, and like my takeaway from the second episode was the comment about the Qawwal is a seeker as much as anyone else. You know, because sometimes you have, at least, you know, just as a novice, not knowing about the tradition and going to listen to a Qawwal, you think it's a performance and that's all it is. But that was a complete change of perception for me. In that key comment was a takeaway for me, that the Qawwal is a seeker as much as anyone else. So is that where, when we get the feeling of, you know, a Qawwal being totally must and going, you know, and shredding, is that the intoxication you're after as well, as a seeker?
I don't think it's like something one is after. It's more of like a byproduct of
yeah,
you could say. Yeah, when one's heart is just completely immersed in ishq and in that devotion, there's not like an end point that one is seeking for. It's just existing in a certain maqam or a certain realm that rubs off on those that hear you. And thanks to this tool of expression, people can all collectively inspire and like join together in that feeling. So
for those that haven't been to, it's summerschoolofmusic.com. Go to the website, you know, pay a nominal fee of $14, I believe, to watch the whole series. This is a fascinating insight into the tradition, and captured beautifully, but by Tahir Bhai's efforts. So tell me about where did the idea even come? I mean, you know, and I'm sure the final manifestation is perhaps not the original idea, but I mean, what happened one day that made you think, right, I want to go and capture this tradition in documentary form?
Yeah, it was like a divine guidance. I think, just like you were saying, how in those early years, nobody gave us a hard time about when we were learning the music in a serious way. And it was like you know, the hand of God guiding us along kind of thing. And it was like that with the documentary thing, because back then I didn't do email. I was so baba. I didn't like have a camera or have a phone. I mean, mobile phones didn't really come out until a few years into our time there. But it was like this, like being in these environments that were just so mind blasting. And it felt like we have to share this. This is like, people have no clue what's going on here. People are going to be really touched by this wisdom, the musicality, this whole atmosphere of devotion. And from us at the time being like, you know, hippie vagabonds and at the beach when we were 20 years old, creating a little circle to sing some devotional bhajan or whatever, we're like, wow, this is like a personification of that has evolved in the whole into like a Mahfil-e Sama, where it's a setting where people come and pray and are in devotion all night and hold space for each other. And you know, so it was like meeting the culmination or the evolution of what we were keen on in a way. So there was that feeling like a responsibility and an enthusiasm to share it. And then I was not a nerd. Now I'm actually a super nerd, FYI. And then it was like, just have a camera and just take some footage of some of these things. So we weren't like going around filming, but sometimes we've been like in a mahfil and something would be happening and the music would be so good, or the pir was going mustard. I don't know, different things, a lot of things. It was very colorful and beautiful. And so we started capturing little bits of footage, Amina and I. And then slowly over the years, that concept came of like, we really have to do, there's not like a comprehensive, definitive documentary on Qawwali that has all this stuff that we're seeing. There's so much that needs to be shared. So as years went by, 20 years almost now, there was like, we started bringing film crews, we started bringing nicer cameras, field recorders, cranes, drones, GoPros, and stuff like that. So part of our tours in some of the years became about like when we go to Sevan Sharif or Sachal Sarmast or Bhidsha, some of these really special places, we'd bring people to film some of the things that were going on there when we were doing our journey there.
And not to in any way jinx your efforts, because some people would be reluctant to put this in the public domain, but I feel it's very important for people to know Tahir Bhai. Correct me if I'm wrong, but this whole documentary and all those efforts you just described about cranes and drones and film crews, etc., has been self-funded.
Oh, there's been help, but the amount of work and the amount of like years, like it's, even if you had like $1 million and you went to Pakistan for a month to film the coolest documentary on Qawwali, it couldn't contain this, because this is like almost 20 years of our journey there, and like month after month of being in all these situations before arriving at a certain moment of receiving some wisdom or some setting was there. So there's that there, most of importantly. But no, it was funded. We had a Kickstarter, we had a GoFundMe. There's a Tabarruk Arts, our nonprofit. Almost half of the cost of the film was people that helped with it. Chris Martin, of course, from Coldplay, was the main person that donated in that time. And then the rest was just us, whatever savings we had and put into it on different levels, and just had to do the work. Like I never wanted to be a video editor. I was about to share that with people, that in large part what you are seeing in this documentary and in the episodes, Tahir Bhai's edited himself. So that's probably a reference to when he said he's a nerd now, and he never used to be. You have to be a bit of a nerd to be able to edit a movie, I guess. Oh my God, at this level?
Yeah, at this level, of course. We're not talking about iMovie, right? So, I mean, the two key takeaways from the first two episodes from me personally, that I pay tribute to you, Tahir Bhai, and whoever's, made this documentary and the ethos with which you've done it, is the Qawwals who were in episode 1. Remind me of their names.
Ustad Javed Bakshi Salamat.
I didn't know of them. I didn't know who they were. And yet their voices and that performance I mean, was on another level, right? And you know, what I'm saying, I'm paying tribute to you is because it has not been an advert for Fanna-Fi-Allah. This has been, you know, an advert for the tradition and the people who are upholding the flame of this tradition, whoever that may be. So I pay tribute to you for that, you know, for capturing that in episode 1. But then you've done the same in episode 2 with the brothers in the red jumpers.
Akhtar Sharif.
Yeah, I mean, again, I mean, phenomenal Qawwals, right? And again, you've really given something to lovers of the tradition in this documentary. I mean, tell me a little bit about these other Qawwals and, you know, their reception to you, not as a Qawwal, but their reception to you in terms of making this documentary.
Yeah, it's interesting like that because, like I said, when we were hearing a lot of these masters and wanting to share it, it was because there was so many different charismatic and masterful artists in Pakistan. Like even on top of the half a dozen that we'd heard recordings of up until that point. So there was this yearning of wanting to share who they were and their music. So in the same way, our documentary features a lot of amazing Qawwals and Sufi singers that aren't necessarily known to everyone, especially in the West. So it feels like a lot of pride to be able to be the ones to share it with a lot of integrity and, like, you know, HD 3 cam, blah, blah, like really well recorded and filmed and edited so that people can receive it after hearing, like you said, that wisdom of Asim and the different masters that kind of get people ready to hear Qawwali from that deeper place. But, you know, we like I said, we lived with Akhtar Sharif in 2003 in their village. In that room number 5 in Pilot Hotel.
Yeah.
Where we first met all the masters, right? Me and Amina were at the Urs of Data Ganja Baksh, and we're in the Pilot Hotel, like hanging with the masters and jamming in the rooms and whatever. And we heard some Qawwali coming from this one room number 5. We didn't know about room number 5, but room number 5 is a thing, and it was a thing for us for years to come. But so we went in the room, and Akhtar Sharif guys were playing. And I was like, fuck yeah. And we got like kind of ushered to the front because it's really thick in there. And everybody's like, oh, Tahir, Amna, Tahir, Amna, Tahir. So we get ushered right to the front. And, you know, I'm like 5 feet away from Akhtar Sharif there, slamming it, Man kuntum mola, man. It knocked my socks off. I had never known about these Qawwals ever. And they moved me so hard. I was in tears. And when the kalam finished, I dived uncontrollably. I dived into Akhtar Sharif's lap. And you know how they're all big and they've got their like matching vests on. There's something really cute and chachaji about them. I like dived into his lap and just cried. And he like petted my head as I cried in his lap. And there's like a whole mahfil of like 100 people all crammed into this room. So yeah, I was very moved. And of course, Amina as well.
I have to pay tribute to you because as someone that, I'm not a connoisseur of Qawwali, you know, I wouldn't even say I'm an avid listener, but perhaps I know more than the average Joe, right? You know, for you to have introduced 2 new Qawwals to me that I knew nothing about through your efforts, I mean, really, I mean, it's you know, it's a massive gift you've given to us, you know, because otherwise these people wouldn't have, you know, I wouldn't have known of them, that's for sure. So as I said, to anyone that wants to watch this documentary, summerschoolofmusic.com, go there. It's $14, I believe, and you'll get access to all 8 episodes. So, Tahir, on a final note then, what do you, I mean, it's been such a labor of love since we've known of each other, you know, the movie's always been in the background, the effort, the shenanigans, the trials and tribulations that came with it, etc.
Yeah.
What do you hope is the legacy of this of this effort and this movie?
Well, it's already by far the very best documentation of Qawwali, the history of, the atmosphere of. So it's less of like feeling like there has to be. I feel like, because, you know, when we're working with like a film director or somebody like in the film industry and we're talking about, we're making this film and they're like, well, what's the story? Like, what's the message that you're trying to get across? And I was like, there's no one message. This is like sharing some wisdom and our unique path as a bunch of like vagabond spiritual seekers guided across the planet to find this music and culture is the bridge to it for, you know, all of our audiences and people from the culture that we come from. But it's like you see in the episode, it's a way of like opening the door for people to be able to receive something that's very dynamic and deep and exotic in many ways. So that's the idea, that it's the power of film is big, and the music itself, the atmosphere, the clips, the wisdom behind it is all big. But the way that we're piecing it together and creating the recipe there is to be able to open that door of people that don't understand this tradition to the extent that we have from being in it so much, that they can taste some of that, like what we have, that spiritual depth and wisdom and that moving quality of the music. Even, you know, before I went to Pakistan, I was listening to cassettes and crying for the first time in my adult life because of the power of the music to like evoke that yearning and that connection to the beloved in the heart. So in the same way, it's like an art movie where it's like a spiritual tool to be able to woo people to this something that's really powerful and precious that we're sharing.
Tahir Bhai, you know, you've left me speechless, so that doesn't happen very often. You know,
Shush.
No, genuinely. I mean, your efforts, your passion, your commitment to the cause, and as I've, you know, tried to do justice to you guys by saying on stage as well, you know, that you know, you truly are living the path, you know, and yeah, it's just keep doing it, man. Just keep doing it. We need more of it. There's too much hate around. There's too much negativity around, and you certainly brighten up a lot of people's lives.
Thanks.
Tahir Bhai, I think I've taken up a lot of your time. I mean, I could sit here forever going deeper. Like, this is almost quite a selfish thing that I'm doing today, spending this time with you. But I've taken up a lot of your time, and I know it's late there in Indonesia as well. Tahir Bhai, I hope you've enjoyed this. I hope our listeners have. This will have a decent shelf life, I'm sure. Everyone that has listened, do share, not for my benefit, not for Qalandar Arts' benefit, not necessarily for Tahir's personal benefit, but for the message that, you know, we're all trying to communicate, that, you know, we can all live in a bit of peace and love and harmony, and this is not just words, you know. So on that note, Tahir Bhai, tragically, we had to cancel our concert this summer due to COVID-19 lockdowns, but there will be times for sure in the future where we will reunite and get such things on stage again. And yeah, stay safe. Thank you for the documentary. Absolutely loving it. I mean, really, really a beautiful thing that you've done. And genuinely, on a final words, I mean, way beyond expectation.
Oh, great.
Like, way beyond. Even based on the trailer that you did, you know, this was just it's on another level. Yeah. You rock, man. You think you're Sufi?
Oh, thanks.
You are.
Thanks, Hassan, for having me. Yeah, it's amazing what you do with this whole Qalandar Arts thing. It's precious in the way that you've supported our group, and I supported a lot of great artists, and I have so many questions for you. Also, it's hard not to just want to bounce things back to you.
No.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Stick to the interesting things. Love listening to Tahir Bhai. Thank you for sharing so much. That's for my sister, who's also sitting in Indonesia, in Jakarta. All right, great. Tahir Bhai, take care. Love to the family. And thanks for everyone too who switched in.
Allah Hafiz.
Allah Hafiz.
Haq Farid. Ya
Nare Hadri.
Farid.